Welcome everyone. It's fantastic to see so many of you here, and I know some people will join, and Emily will let them in as they join there. So yeah, we're really excited to welcome you to our Thought Leadership Teach Meet this afternoon. I'm Daisy Cave and I head up the senior leadership team at Twinkl. We provide advice, guidance, support, resources, content for leaders all across the UK and internationally. And so today we're going to be looking at broadly the use of AI, digital technology, raising attainment and reducing workload. So first of all, in the session, we're going to have a panel discussion with two fantastic guest speakers today, Kingsley and Caroline Allams, who I will tell you a bit more about in a moment. And then we have our very own John Park here with us, who is our product owner for Twinkl AI, who's going to tell you a little bit about the AI offer that we have at Twinkl for you to support you in your settings. There we go. So I think Emily has covered most of this, but the session is being recorded. It won't be during the Q&A, but it's always useful to be mindful of confidentiality, and whenever asking questions, don't use the names of pupils or settings. Again, Emily's already covered this, but if you keep muted, so we've got no background noise, and questions are really, really welcome. So we're looking forward to that. We've got some real experts here today who will be fantastic to help to expand your knowledge, awareness, and get you inspired to get going with more technology in your setting or classroom. So on our panel today, we have the brilliant Kingsley. He's had over 30 years in educational technology sector, as well as 25 years working in education. He's the chair of a MAT, SEND board chair. He's a DFE advisory board member for East of England, an education author and speaker. And also with us today, we have Caroline Allams, who is an experienced senior leader, and she's the co-founder of NatterHub, which is a multi-award-winning scenario-based online safety learning platform. This teaches children the soft skills that underpin positive digital citizenship. She's also winner of the Women to Watch Award at the 2023 Business Women in Education Awards. And so we're absolutely delighted to have her with us today. So welcome, Al and Caroline. It's fantastic to have you here.
Hello, hello.
Hello, thank you.
Have I missed anything about both of you that you'd like to share with our viewers, listeners today, attendees?
What more could you have than the woman to watch? That's perfect.
I know, I'm not sure I'm entirely comfortable with that being banded before I've actually said anything. So you've set the bar high there.
Well, I've worked with both Caroline and Al, and I know that their knowledge is exceptional in this area, and it's going to be very useful. So unlike a sort of formal training, we're going to just have a discussion to cover various points that are going to support the aims of this session with Al and Caroline. So I think, Al, you were going to start off with getting us going today.
I am indeed. And just a declaration for everybody who's listening, I thought the title was using Allen technology in education. So I've had to quickly repurpose what we're going to be talking about. But on a slightly more serious note, although, hey, this life's too short to take things too seriously, Caroline and I just had a chat beforehand, and we did decide to shape this into a bit of a free flow conversation and discussion. So we'll dip into different bits, and hopefully there'll be a chance for any questions that come out of it. But fundamentally, because AI is very popular at the moment, it's obviously featuring in lots of the conversations. But when we actually talk about using AI and technology in education, many of the considerations and rubrics are exactly the same. We just add on some extra bits in terms of potentially how we most effectively use things and how we consider selecting those tools. I am conscious this is a teach meet, so I always like to give a quick takeaway for anybody who's listening in. So Windows key full stop will allow you to pull up your emoji keyboard. So now there's no excuse for not sending lots of smileys about Caroline and I when you're sharing any feedback on the discussion. So for me, technology is very much at the heart. I'm very much focused around technology, but used for purpose, not technology used for technology's sake. And often, perhaps there feels almost an unspoken pressure that you're not doing it right. You're not a forward-thinking school or organization unless you're technology laden in every aspect of what you do. That's absolutely not the case. In fact, I often use the guide, which is less is more unless it's chocolate. And that doesn't mean don't do any, but actually it's better to do a few things well and build confidence and layer than it is to try and do too many things too quickly. So there'll be no encouragement from Caroline and I for a race to the technology pinnacle today. I do think, however, that actually when we talk about effective use of technology, whether it's AI driven or not, and we'll cover a few of the topics around that, actually when we reflect on it, it's the human aspect, and around that the professional development, whether it's teachers having confidence using the tools or students having the confidence to use the tools and use them safely and effectively, that is the distinction between a successful and non-successful technology. So I always start with a kind of a conversation, which is before you get too wrapped up in your digital plans and what you're going to be doing, pause and think about the key questions. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And how do you plan to measure it? And over many years, we've been preconditioned that the way we measure successful technology adoption is based very largely around progress and attainment in some shape or form. And that's kind of understandable. But I would also say now, thinking more than ever on the pressures on our school system, that we actually need to be thinking much wider than that. We need to be thinking about actually why we're doing these things. Well, maybe it's to support SEMH. Maybe it's to support embedding and developing the soft skills, the digital skills that our students need for the future. Maybe it's about teacher workload and retention, tools that can allow us to work more effectively or free up teacher time to do the human things that they're best at. Maybe it's to do things that allow us to work smarter, understanding data more effectively, using tools that can do the human bits better than humans can, and allowing the humans to play to their strengths. So I think that's my starter for 10 is you're not going to get a list of, here's all the top products you should try, but very much the considerations of the questions that you should ask before you consider your adoption. And I'm also just going to share, before we head off into a bit of a conversation about things to think about, is to just remind about that CPD. It's something we often talk about, and actually when it comes to sitting down and talking with school leaders, MAT leaders, as I do on a regular basis, CPD ends up being very much wrapped around a little bit of time at inset. But actually, when it comes to digital skills, digital technology, it's more about muscle memory and continuous use. I often say, and again, some will agree with me and some will say that's a bit simplistic, but in many schools and MATs, you can access a phone book which will let you know who all the different people are with experience in each department of each subject. But if I asked you who were the go-to people for this particular tool, who were the people that would be able to provide you with training or resources on the use of Teams or Meet or whatever the tools might be, it's often much harder to find and identify those. And there's another very quick takeaway, which is find your flag bearers. Who are the people across your school or trust that have confidence with the technology, that by being connected with them empowers others to give things a go, to try things and know there's a friendly face they can reach out to for support and advice. And sometimes that's also linked around, again, we're not talking about products at this point, do we regularly survey our staff and understand where we are with our technological confidence? And when I say technological confidence, lots of it isn't about, do you know how to do certain things, although that's absolutely a strand. Again, it's much more empowered about, do you know what's available? Do you know how it might be effectively used versus not effectively used? And there's some great work shared recently from Leo Academies Trust, where they've undertook a year's work looking at educational technology and digital in their schools, looking at it from a pedagogy perspective, not just measuring in terms of attainment, but measuring all the intangibles of how that can have a positive impact. So I think the more we can share that, the better. So before, as I was kind of keen for us to do, talking about how we might think about the right questions to ask when we're looking at digital tools, the thing that I'm really, really interested in, and Caroline is the perfect person, is recognizing that actually we're not looking at digital just to raise attainment and to reduce workload, but we're looking at digital because actually fundamentally they're core skills that our students need to develop and have confidence in for the future. So I want to flip across to Caroline and just say, can we just talk about some of the key things to be mindful of when it comes to digital and digital skills as part of our adoption of technology in our schools?
Yeah, thank you. And to be described by the royalty of EdTech, Kingsley, as the perfect person, is a great honour. Thank you. As you said, I'm very interested in children's relationships with technology, and I come very much, just being really transparent, I come very much from a early intervention, primary school focus. That's my background. And how we really prepare children for a future of learning beyond primary school. And I think, you know, all the work that happens in primary schools right from the beginning of the entry point is around children's relationships and the human skills, the personal, social, and how we protect their childhood and their mental health moving forward, so that they are ready, and their readiness to learn. And when I say I'm interested in relationships with technology, it's kind of multifaceted, in that it's their relationships with technology and how they interact with devices. And just you know, something that Al said, you know, is how we assess as well children are conducting that relationship with technology is a key moment to mention. That, you know, with our children and introducing new technology, it's important that we don't confuse their ability to use the functionality of different systems or apps and different tools, but also their interactivity and what it means for their personal and social development. So I mean, yeah, interested in the relationships that you know, the times that they pick up and put down their digital devices and their dependency on devices, and how this what that does, you know, how that happens in school as well, but also their relationships that they carry out through technology. And we know that in terms of an online safety and digital citizenship aspect, it's the relationships that are carried out through technology that for primary schools can also raise you know, a whole host of interesting conversations and potential risks that we need to steer children away from, or help them navigate their way through those. And so it'll be really interesting in this session to unpack the soft skills that we need to develop in order that children are ready to use technology and to interact with AI, and how that relationship pans out. But really to remind all of you, you know, that the things that you're already concentrating on and focusing on in terms of children's relationships is also going to be key moving forward. So building resilience, developing critical thinking skills, promoting the importance of kindness and respect and open-mindedness, and questioning content, and all of those things really go so far in our preparation for a future world of technology.
Thanks, Caroline, because I think actually when we talk about soft skills, they often now get referred to as power skills. And if you speak to any employer about the key facets they want for people joining their organizations, you'll often find those are the majority of the items at the top of the list. What I was thinking we'd do is just have a quick foray through how might we go about thinking about digital tools, selecting the right digital tools, and then we can talk about the soft skills and how we actually get and leverage the most out of those tools. Because often the conversation is that Kickstarter of, well, how do we go about looking at the tools that are going to have the right impact? And many of you, I hope, will be familiar with the context of evidence-informed EdTech, making sure we're looking at stuff that's not shiny, but things that actually are built around purpose and have got some form of evidence. And in many schools, depending on your scale, you don't always have the luxury of having specialized or dedicated people to lead your digital journey. There's also a case of sometimes you're looking for a particular year group or a particular department. And so often there are guides. I often share rubrics about thinking about that. How do I consider the right tools for my school? And I think it starts with recognizing that there are two considerations. There's curriculum and there's technology. And on the curriculum side, depending on the kind of tool, you know, there's different sectors. But as a general rule of thumb, you want to be considering whether that tool is going to align with your current curriculum, how you're aware of what content it has within it, and is it validated and appropriate. A really important one, but an obvious one that often gets overlooked. Are we sure we haven't already got another tool that does the same thing? And why is this better? And do we actually have an understanding of its purpose? It's either its instructional purpose or how it aligns with delivery of our curriculum, or something on a broader scale. How's it keeping our children safe? How's it developing skills? In parallel, there's a technical consideration, and that's really important at the moment. We know school budgets are really, really tough. So one is to make sure that technology you look at actually works not just on your current, but potentially on future devices. That word platform agnostic springs to mind, which is making sure much of the technology out there intentionally is made to be sticky. Think of the Amazon model. Lovely people before I get any kind of letter in the post. But you not only buy your books, but you buy your shopping and you get your music library all in it. And of course, by joining that ecosystem, it's really hard to leave. And in the same way, when you capture lots of rich and useful student data, you don't want to be tied into systems that limit if you decide that, again, all platforms are equally good in my eyes, but you decide to switch from iPads to Chromebooks or Chromebooks from iPads, that suddenly the tools you've selected no longer will work in that environment. Then it's also considering infrastructure. For some schools, the budget gets spent on the kit and the technology, and then the infrastructure, the Wi-Fi, the bandwidth that you need to deliver your rich content or your immersive experiences isn't there. There's a big one about school privacy policies, making sure you undertake a DPIA, data protection impact assessment, and looking very much at data processing agreements for vendors. In simple terms, we're looking at what data do you capture, where do you store it, who has access to it, and for how long? And then alongside that, what are the risks if that data was breached? And then you also might want to think about integration. It's always this thing about we don't want lots of separate places where the same data is being stored. So considering whether you can automatically pull your student data from Microsoft or Office or other rostering products means that you can have that kind of connected ecosystem. And then you can move into the process of saying, well, actually, now we've got that, how do we make sure we can evaluate it? Do we trial it with our students, or do we make the decision based purely on the brochure or website? What evidence have we secured, whether that's anecdotal evidence from peers, white papers, case studies? Have we trialed it with our students and captured their feedback? And if we follow all those ticks and boxes, we can get to the point of having then confidence when we make a recommendation to buy something. Along that way, we might also think, if any of the listeners here are from multi-academy trusts, there's some economies of scale here. If we're looking at it across multiple schools, it would be great if we standardize. If we come back to that golden key that unlocks our confidence, skills, and getting familiarity with the tool, it's much easier to support staff across a trust if all of them are using the same platform or tools for the resources that we save. So trying to connect the dots a little bit and share with others, we probably improved a little bit post-pandemic. Some of us felt tools like Teams were just a messaging app, but now we've got much better ways of sharing across subject groups, across multiple schools, to compare what tools are you using, what lesson plans and resources have you got where appropriate. And so there's better commonality there. But understanding we want safe tools, but we want tools that aren't too sticky so that we can look at future tools that look even better is really, really important. But I would always argue, and I try and share, that whilst I am a huge fan of technology, not all products are great. There's a lot that are brilliant. There are some that are not very good. There are some that are great products that necessarily don't get the level of support from the organizations that are working with them. There's some that are very much committed to education, and there are a few that sometimes get steered by the shiny of money rather than the original moral purpose. And I think it's really important that we look at technology based on relationships. We don't start transactions, we start relationships. And good edtech companies, you will very quickly see from the reviews, from the white papers and case studies, and just the people that you talk to, whether you're dealing with decent people and good products that are going to co-produce in the future with you. And that's another important one. Our platforms and our environments are changing all the time. We want products that are constantly evolving. Now, I'm going to move on to a bit about skills, and it links into AI, because most of you will be familiar with the AI conversation because it's everywhere at the moment. And I do like to say, well, let's just pause and separate between what we see most of in the online media, which is generative AI. I type something and I create something different, versus the non-generative, which is using AI to actually analyze the existing data we've got and shape insights and advice. And actually, in our schools, there's a lot more non-generative AI that's being used for personalized learning and for assessing student data, then there is the generative, but that absolutely is coming. And I think most importantly, it's been seen to help reduce teacher workload when it can be used as a starter, not an ender, for preparation of resources. But we're also seeing lots of our learners starting to engage with it in different ways, and we can either put our heads in the sand or we can embrace it. And often there's some really simple guides and ideas that you can sit down with learners, again, dependent on age and stage. You know, should I be using ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, all those different resources? Some are framed within educational context, but obviously for particularly our secondary learners, we can be asking the important questions, which is, you know, should I be using a chatbot? Well, if it's to help get you started on something, yeah, maybe. If it's to help you improve on something you've done, maybe. If it's to give you some extra reference points, then that's great. If it's to start, finish, and end and complete an assignment for you, then no, absolutely not. But what we're more interested in, I believe, is the skills, the soft skills for our learners that allow them to challenge, to evidence, to look at the authenticity of, to have the confidence using, and so on. So in my little flip-flop from talking about the advent of many of the new AI tools that you will have encountered, which staff, I might add, are using quite successfully for preparing lesson resources, content. Great if you want to get imagery that's royalty free, make your own now. And of course, it's becoming more and more accessible. But at the flip side, it's much more about students and their understanding and confidence about what the output is that we get. Should we believe it? Are we happy with it? Do we get hallucinations? Do we get bias? Do we get all sorts of other things? So Caroline, help me out. Let's talk about skills and how that overlinks with the skills that allow learners to access and use technology more effectively.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, I can get quite excited just by that little resume of different tools that you mentioned and how they can be used in the classroom. And I know that the schools that we speak to, it's really easy to feel very overwhelmed in the area of technology, especially for primary school teachers who are juggling so many different subjects and require you know, so much knowledge and skills right across the curriculum. So then to add in the notion of embedding generative AI in particular into the classroom environment, I can really relate to those teachers just feeling like, what, you know, don't even know where to begin and how to go about it. And I think one of the things I think you already mentioned as well around, you know, giving teachers the opportunity to play, to learn, to find the people who can show them, even if it's just a starting point to kind of get stuck in. It's really satisfying and fun to play around. You can sort of liken it, I suppose, to when Granny first works out the filters on Snapchat, that to go through that process with students and start making use of different AI tools. You know, it's really quick to notice the importance of literacy proficiency with AI, and I think, you know, keeping with the curriculum, the foundational skills in English and maths, you know, remain essential for students in using this generative AI, because subpar literacy skills are going to cause ambiguous communication, which is in turn going to confuse the AI and sort of undermine its accuracy and effectiveness. So I mean, in the primary classroom, certainly, you know, language development is going to be a massive skill that we're going to have to really work on and hone and analyze and understand for our children to be able to get the best use out of AI. And of course, it's going to become more prevalent in the workplace. It's going to be crucial for our education system to form these closer ties with what our children are needing to be prepared for. So I think as a primary school teacher, the whole the use of language and how we teach it so that children are taught to think and problem solve and critically assess how they're going to create step-by-step frameworks and be able to articulate what they want from the technology. I mean, that for me is really exciting. And I think, as you mentioned, Al, ages and stages to start very simply understanding what our technology can do for us. You know, with basic technology in the classroom, really, you know, makes a massive paradigm shift into you know, a whole new world. So I think as a starting point, language development is a crucial one. I don't know if you want to add anything to the language aspect, Al.
I think most of the time when it refers to language and literary skills, I always got needs more effort from my teachers, so I may not be the best person. However, on a slightly more serious note, you know, language is fundamental to many of the platforms. I mean, we've often talked about AI, and sometimes that word intelligence is overstated. And many of you will be familiar with the Turing test. Can these technologies convince us that that the technology we're talking to is actually a human being rather than a computer? Well, actually, most of the advancements that we really see over the last year have been in the natural language processing rather than necessarily the intelligence. And so the technology is able to converse with us in a way that the language is far better constructed and far more human in its communication. But as I was taught or discovered reading off the front of magazines back in the 80s when I was learning to code and do all sorts of cool things with technology, as a general rule, garbage in, garbage out. If you write bad code, you get a bad product. I see Jonathan, the AI man, is nodding on that one there. Well, in much the same way, when it comes to accessing technology, and particularly when it comes to AI, if you don't ask the right questions, if you're not explicit and in the detail that you share, you can't be surprised if you don't get the answer that you want. So effective questioning skills, which I might add are hugely translatable to the workplace. Those skills aren't just so I can get the most out of these products, are really, really important. While I'm talking a little bit, I've just seen there's a couple of questions popped in, so I'm always quite keen to pick up with any bits that sit in there. So one bit was Barbara asking about data protection policy, DPIA, Data Protection Impact Assessment. In your school, it should be completed for any new bit of software, but also for anything that involves data and security, including your CCTV system. So that's something to check out and make sure you do. There's a question about some schools are quite reticent to even allow staff access to AI tools and products. Well, part of it comes down to that bit before, which is the DPIA, but it also links into actually what's your school's policy. Now, wearing my trust hat, I'd argue that you've either got a thing of there's fear, isn't there? We don't want everybody using it. So the starter for 10 is to empower the opportunity for staff to use a range of approved apps. The best policy that I think I've seen, which at the moment is, well, frankly, every country around the world is coming out with their own guidance and recommendation and best practice, is as an educator, if you use AI to construct some text or content or for school policies, you should signpost within your output. This has been created, but this section was generated using AI. You signpost it. You may want to have an extra layer, which is on policies or public documents that use that. There's a second check and balance to make sure that you're not potentially communicating something that's not appropriate. But it starts with confidence. Let staff play with the things and figure out not to use within their lesson planning or their lessons next week, but over a period of time, what works well. There's a few questions about recommending tools. I'm happy to share at the end of it, and if I have time, I'll post it into the chat. There's some great people. Many of you will come across Dan Fitzpatrick, educator. He's got a great resource which shows all sorts of different AI-based tools, but they're rated based on different appropriateness and strength. Many of you will know that if you're a Microsoft, you can access many of the ChatGPT functions through Bing. Google have their own version. I'm a big fan of Claude AI, which is really, really good. I also like the fact in that if you're a teacher and you want to save a bit of time, you can upload a PDF to it and ask it to give you a summary of the salient points, which is really, really handy. Stable Audio is another one. Again, it's a freebie one, but you can basically put the text in and it will create you some music. So if you want to add it into your resources to capture attention, again, avoid the royalty free. But I'd also say, you know, Teach Meets are fantastic. Why don't you have your own in school or in trust termly Teach Meet, where everyone shares a top tip, a few minutes of an app that's worked well for them, or frankly, that didn't work well for them, or how they discovered that by changing their questioning approach to this, it did. It's about building that ecosystem of sharing that really really links it back together. Now, I've gone off on a bit of a segue there from you saying, Al, any answers on language? But that's what I'm bad at doing. So I apologize,
Oh,
Caroline.
I think we were both good at that.
And I just wanted to jump
Don't you
in
say
there
time's up, Daisy.
Sorry.
Not 2.5 hours yet.
No, not at all. I just wanted to jump in and share because it's quite a good time with the discussion you're talking about at the minute, and something that we have developed and are continuing to develop within the leaders team at Twinkl is guidance and advice for leaders on those aspects that are slightly more worrying, like GDPR, safeguarding issues that may arise, because like anything, there are risks involved, and maybe they're slightly less familiar to us in terms of GDPR. As you know, classroom teachers, we don't tend to, you know, we're more comfortable with nouns and times tables. And so we are breaking that down for you, and there are coming out with your reflection sheets today some really useful resources which give you some guidance and advice with that to go alongside, which will be really useful for you. So I just thought that was a useful time to mention those.
Good share, Daisy. One thing many of you might have spotted is around the wrapper of things like ChatGPT, there are now things that are very lazily called GPTs, which in effect is allowing individuals to create their own variants. And there's some pros and cons there, because they've got a huge library of them, and frankly, a lot of them are questionable in their purpose or intent. But the point that we all worry about when it comes to AI and all these tools ultimately lies often down in two parts. One is the data set. What's it actually inquiring from to give me my answers? And then secondly, there's that challenge around algorithmic bias. And, you know, a very clumsy one, it can be, if I ask for a picture of a nurse, will it always show me women or men as well? And if I say a picture of a doctor, will it always show me men or women as well? That's a really simplistic example, but there's always concerns about bias. Within the context of GPTs, and again, all platforms, all variants offer similar elements. In some cases, it's actually really positive because you can limit the data sets down to resources that you want to include within yours and not include data sets outside of that. So we are starting to see, rightly, some really good education products that are much more controlled in terms of the data sets and where the information comes from. We're seeing organizations, including Matt, talking about, well, we can create our own GPTs with guidance on policy or well-being or other resources that schools can access, or within the staff can access within the school, but it's limited to certain data sets. But there absolutely are still considerations. So I think the more guidance, the better. And I also say, I'm allowed to, because I'm a bit grey and wrinkly, sometimes when it comes to technology conversations in schools and trusts, the biggest problem is the leadership aren't always the ones with the lived experience or the best confidence in the technology we're talking about. Whereas almost every other topic, it makes sense that SLT or trust leadership are the ones driving it forward. So it also requires a little bit of confidence to empower some of our middle leaders and other educators within the school and trust to share not only their personal experiences, but also many may have come from a different school last year where they'd already been on a different pathway on their digital journey. So that context, maybe back to our teach meet kind of mindset of actually fostering an environment of sharing, is often the best way to fast track things.
And just to add to that, Al, I think fostering the culture of we are learning together. I mean, the speed in which, you know, the evolution of technology is faster than ever. So raising that with children, along with the potential bias, along with the potential risk when you are using this technology, I think is critical with children, and raising the issue of its limitations and the need to question, even when something apparently seems so intelligent, as you said, but actually we still need to ensure that we are on this journey hand in hand with our students, to make sure that they are still questioning, they're still understanding where that room for improvement is. How can we ensure that, again, the quality of our input is, and how we are structuring our requests to the technology is going to yield a better response based on an understanding of knowing where the potential risk is and where there may be bias, etc. So I think unpacking you know, that learning journey that we're on with our students, and right now in the classroom, this is what we are able to do with this particular tool, asking them the question, what do you think they're going to be able to do next? And opening up their anticipation of the fact that technology is going to evolve. I think that also disarms and reduces the overwhelm for teachers to focus on, right now we know this, and that it's going to change, and that as teachers you're not expected to understand every aspect of it, to be able to use it well in a teaching and learning situation. And I think going back to Daisy's mention of safeguarding, I think just to come in from a safety angle, it's really important that we are talking and having impactful, relevant conversations with our children about the technology that they may be accessing in school, but possibly even more importantly, the technology that they're using outside of school, and for schools to find a way to lift a lid on those children's experiences with technology, so that understanding their relationships with that technology, or the relationships that they're carrying out through that technology, that there's some way of guiding them through safely, with an expectation of behavior and what is and isn't acceptable. And I think when we're raising the profile of what is and isn't acceptable, there's less tendency then just to kind of, as a teacher, cross your fingers and hope that nobody types anything inappropriate, but actually talk about the elephant in the room, and structure it and frame it so that you feel more in control of it when you are using technology where there's potential risk.
Yeah, I absolutely agree 100%. I'm just following what you're saying and listening to some of the questions that have just been raised. And I think, we sometimes get wrapped up in the latest technology, and we feel like the levers we need to pull are technological, but actually most of them are human-based. They're skills-based, they're confidence-based. Again, not intended in any way as a plug, but for those of you interested in where can I get training courses for free, what about resources? Every Saturday morning I do a newsletter that goes out, which covers, most of it is other people's wisdom that I've picked up, and it often covers, every week it will be new AI apps, schools that have had some success with it. Some interesting strands I've seen recently have been how schools are using digital in the broader sense to align in primaries with universal design for learning, the UDL approach, how they can differentiate in some of the learning. We're seeing some tools being used when we have that year 6, year 7 transition. So our primary learners going into secondary and not ready for the secondary experience. So in my own trust, we have what we call our cloud group that start off in one classroom, but in year 7, where they get the kind of still the traditional wraparound primary teaching. And then maybe, an example would be, rather than perhaps in year 7 immediately diving into the concepts of Shakespeare, they're going to be building the Globe Theatre in Minecraft. And in doing it, they're going to start talking about how the layout and the sound and the stage and the audience, and bringing in other concepts. And at the same time, they're also acquiring other bits and pieces. I will post, when I've finished and we're listening to the lovely Jonathan talking about Twinkl bits, I will quietly tap away on my keyboard and post some links in for you. And my newsletter is through LinkedIn, so I'll share the link so that you can grab onto that. But I say there's some great resources between us we can share. And I'm allowed to say it because she's on this call. But if we're talking about student digital skills and we're looking in our primaries at how to make sure that they're best empowered, if you haven't tried NatterHub, then you really should, because it is a quality solution made by really decent people. And it's one where you'll never hear anything other than positivity about what they offer. So I'm more than happy, even though I know you've hit record, just to put it out there and say it's one that I'm more than happy to put my name on and say it is a cracking solution.
Oh, well, thank you.
Sorry, Karen, I was just going to mirror that and say that absolutely. I mean, for myself personally as an educator, but Twinkl as well, Al Kingsley's newsletter is a fantastic source of guidance and knowledge. And that continuous development of what's going on there. So highly recommend following that as well on LinkedIn, and just generally following Al on any of his social platforms, because he's just a wealth of knowledge and a real joy to follow as well. It's in a, you know, it's
You
good
just like
fun as
my
well.
AI pictures of puppies everywhere, don't you?
Yeah. and just again mirroring that for Caroline with NatterHub, and the concept of it being scenario based online safety that supports our pupils. And we know that the majority of our teachers, leaders, educators are nervous about education because it does open up a new set of skills that our children need to develop. But we're teachers, we're in the best position to teach them and to be able to develop that. And so, yeah, some really fantastic points there. I'm cautious of time because I could go on and talk to it. And I just wonder, Caroline, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just wanted to add one thing. Thank you very much for the shout outs, and yeah, any opportunity you get to listen to Al, absolutely take it or read it. 100%, you can rely on that information. I just wanted to add about pupil voice, student experiences, and how to also, because it's not always about finding out when things have gone wrong online. And I know many of you will be pastoral leads and deputy heads who have to sort out when the WhatsApp group chat's gone wrong in year 6. But you know, we work closely with many schools, and one of the things that is happening that's really exciting is that teachers who need to learn more about AI and creativity in technology, and want to incorporate new products into the classroom, asking their students for advice, even right down in the primary school, getting them to say the best thing that happened to me online this week, and turning it into a real positive. Because I think we're often so overly focused on the negatives or the dangers or the risks, but actually there are so many brilliant things that children are accessing online that, you know, teachers could make brilliant use of in the classroom. So, and an amazing opportunity for peer-on-peer learning. So opening up that opportunity to share from your students to teachers, I think is a really interesting and positive dynamic.
Absolutely, Caroline. That's a really nice thing that everyone could go away and try in their class, their school, their setting next week. So we have more time for questions. Please don't worry. So continue to put those in the chat if you have them, or save them for a moment. But I'm going to pass over now to John Park, who is our, as I said before, our very own Twinkl AI Product Owner. And we are, you know, are delighted to be able to offer a number of fantastic tools that use those qualities of AI that we've heard about from Al and Caroline to support pupils, support teacher workload. And so I'm going to pass over to John now, who's going to tell you a bit about what Twinkl can offer.
Hello, yes. So as I say, I'm Jonathan Park. My background is in primary education. I was a classroom teacher in primary, including 2 years in international school in China as well. And since August, I've been the AIPO, which is a job title hard to say quickly. And despite what you may think looking at that picture, I'm not 12 years old. It's a very flattering photo in many ways. I am older than that picture suggests. So why AI? So I've been the AIPO since August, as I've said. And I think basically, as you will all know, the biggest problem with teaching retention at the moment is workload and how to manage that well. And we're here to help teachers. So we've been looking at ways where we can build tools which use AI to save teachers time and to help them really get on with the job. So AI, I think we've been talking about a bit, can speed up those non-teaching tasks, whether it's writing lesson plans, creating resources, admin tasks. It can speed those up. And as Al said, it can be really useful as a beginning of the start. If you're using it beginning, middle, end without checking it, you're probably going to have problems. But it's really useful for saving time and getting going with those things. And I think when we think about resources, traditionally, there were kind of two models, weren't there? You'd either make it yourself, or you'd buy or download something someone else had made. Now, if you're making it yourself, that's a lot of time. And the second one often wouldn't be specific enough to your context, because it couldn't be. As a teacher, I remember having to create a reading comprehension on the leading striker of a championship football team to engage one of my SEN kids. And he loved it, and it really helped his learning. But that's quite a time task. Another example, I also had to create an example text modeling the use of relative clauses in persuasive writing about the Eam plague village, which was, again, fairly niche. There wasn't much around at the time. So those case studies are where AI can come in. It can help us create those personalized resources and responses and get us going on that process. It won't always be perfect, but it will get you a step of the way there. So that's the general idea of why we've been looking at AI. And I think if we go to the next slide, we can dive in a bit more about some of the tools we've created to help those teachers. So we have on site at the moment tools which help, which create word searches with AI and acrostic poems, PowerPoint quizzes. So if you want a quick quiz on any subject, something a bit more niche, crosswords, discussion cards, closed passages. These are resources that we can make using AI. And as we've said, it's a start of a process. It will need checking by a teacher to make sure it's suitable for the context, but it's about saving time and getting going. Adventure stories, play scripts, matching activities. These are resources, text-based resources, which will help save those teachers time. Now, I'm not going to go into all of these in great detail. You all know what a word search is, but it's about using AI collaboratively with the teacher to create something that is of use in that setting and can get you something quick. And as I said before, it's that overlap of where you need something a bit more specific, but also something which doesn't take too long to make. But I will dive into a few tools. Sorry, go back to the previous one.
Sorry, that's me being too quick.
Oh, you're very good. Age group, generally speaking, all our tools are aimed for anything from early years to secondary. We usually include that variable, and you can control for that specific one. So if you want a word search for a Key Stage 1 child, you can specify that you only want 10 words in it. It will create a simple one like that. If you want something for secondary, it will be more advanced. We try to include in all tools those variabilities, so you can choose what age group you want and then choose the topic. I'm having a quick look there. There are some, obviously, which you wouldn't want to put in front of early years. I think probably reception is too early to do a closed passage text, but your children may be very advanced, so go for it. But generally speaking, it's that flexibility of whatever age. And one tool we've been developing quite a lot is this colouring sheet generator. This creates colouring sheets on any topic tailored to children's interests or class topics. So you can just put in a prompt, it will generate it. It will generate 4 images. Of those 4, 1 will be good, usually. Which platform? It depends on the tool. So we have some which use a modified version of OpenAI. We have some which use some of the image generators. So it does depend on each one up. But yeah, we move on to the next one. So Ari is the big one. It's the one which, if you go to the Twinkl website, there'll be a button for it at the top. This is an educational assistant chatbot. So we have, at the last count, 210, I think, different prompts which you can search through or filter. And it's basically those tasks which involve text, which are usually quite admin-y. It gets you going on them. It creates a starting thing going. So one thing I think we've talked about before in this afternoon is about confidence, about the idea of, do you know how to use the tools? And sometimes if you go to some of the software, it can be a bit daunting. As Al said, if you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out. The idea of AriBase is to make it easy for teachers to use. It's answer some questions, and get something out of it. So rather than having to come up with something from scratch, you just go in, answer a series of questions, and it should create something for you. And then increasingly, we're looking at child-facing tools. So how can we create safe tools which engage children in topics using AI? And safety is a really important thing here. So talk to historical figures, quite a good one. You can choose any historical figure and ask some questions and get responses. So I've talked to a Viking Jarl, I've talked to Martin Luther King, and got some responses back from them. So these are just some of the tools we have. And it's looking at those tasks which take time away from what teachers need to be doing, which is teaching, engaging in that, planning the top level, and really strategizing. Can we take some of these admin tasks away from teachers, A, to keep them in the profession, and B, to get them to spend their time where they need to spend it? The colouring sheet question there about calculations in each sentences, at the moment, it's a black and white outline. Children are free to colour it in the way they want, but I do quite like the idea of a colour by number system. That could be an interesting one for AI to develop. One thing we are...
Oh, sorry, John.
Okay, no, jump in.
I was just going to say, I think that links to something that we do quite a lot at Twinkl to elevate those colouring sheets. Is that the colour code? Sorry, the number coding for the key to add that advanced level there, especially because we know that colouring can be an extremely good calming activity for a child, but we might want to give them that additional challenge as well. So yeah, it's absolutely something we can go back and look at developing with our AI tools.
Absolutely, I love that idea. So yes, I know the sort of resources you mean now, and they're brilliant. I've used them before quite a lot of starter activities, particularly, I'm going to be honest, around Christmas time. But yes, that's a great idea, and we can absolutely look into that. And that's the thing with AI, because the field is evolving so quickly, what is available for teachers will be changing regularly, which is why the idea of a newsletter, why Al's newsletter is such a great tool, because what's good now and what exists now will be different from what's available in 2 months' time. We'll develop new things. It's an interesting area where the technology is moving so quickly. Often there can be a lag in education, and we can struggle to keep up. And actually, as we say, it's not necessarily about keeping up, it's about being aware of what's going on so we can give the best education to the children under our care we can, so we can give the best support to the staff under our guidance that we can, and so that we can make sure that our time is being spent on the things which is valuable, which adds direct value to children's learning, and which frankly will keep teachers engaged and in the education system.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that. And like you mentioned, we are continually developing our AI offer, and you can keep up to date with that by following us on various socials and looking out for our various newsletters. And if you ever do have ideas or things you would like us to explore further, you can always get in touch with us via our socials, via Twinkl Care's team, to suggest things. We are here to work with you, to work with our community, to help teachers teach and to help leaders lead.